Welcome back to Vstudio. I'm joined this afternoon by Jon Cruthers. Jon is the VP at AED, which is an acronym for Associated Equipment Distributors. Really, this is the organization for heavy equipment dealers and distributors. Jon is an industry veteran. He knows it back and forth, and I'm really excited. We're fresh off the heels of the big AED summit that took place in January. A lot of buzz, a lot of excitement, and excited to dig into what it all means with Jon. So thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex, for the invite.
Yeah, Jon. So first of all, I probably butchered the background on you. So why don't you give us a little bit of perspective on just what you've been doing in your career? I know you've been with AED for a while, and AED is actually a very long-standing organization. So maybe give us some background here.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll start with AED. AED's been around for over 100 years. Started as a distributor organization for heavy equipment distributors. Over time, we've added manufacturers and service providers to our portfolio of members. We cover really everything involved with heavy equipment distribution across several marketplaces: construction, agriculture, material handling, cranes, just to name a few. So really everything that's involved with supporting equipment distribution, covering the U.S. and Canada. I came here about 6 years ago to head up the sales and business development organization. Primary focus is kind of doing what we can to grow the association, bring more people into the organization, and allow them to reap the benefits of everything that we have to offer, as well as be the main point of contact to support our annual conference, AED Summit, which takes place every year in January.
Yeah, well, you did a good job because you brought my company into the space for the first time, and the summit was a great experience for us. There was a lot of excitement, engagement. Audience members, or I should say attendees, were very interactive. Is that normal? You know, I have the perspective of 1 year, but it felt like there was this. Maybe it's post-COVID and everybody's just excited to see one another, but there was definitely a buzz and an excitement throughout the week.
We were fortunate enough. Our 2020 conference was, of course, in January before we all really had to experience COVID. We were fortunate enough to be able to delay Summit in 21 until May, and we did pull off the event in May. We did have better than expected turnout for even that conference, because at that point people had started getting vaccinations and were coming out. What you experienced is pretty typical. It's a very engaging group of companies. Obviously, the industry is doing extremely well right now. All of the industries are. The people are very good about engaging with each other, looking for solutions. And that's a little bit of what I do. And while you guys got involved, is part of what our members seek from us is to go out there and find companies that should be part of the organization, that they should utilize in their businesses, that might provide them some advantages, address some of the challenges that they face, whether it's new product lines they are looking for to grow in their marketplace, or new service providers that can offer solutions for them to help them streamline their business, reduce costs, optimize their operations, things like that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think with the recent news of all of the infrastructure spending, it definitely seems like there's a bright future, at least in the next 5 years, whatever that may end up lasting. What were some of the big themes that you felt were emerging, the conversations or the focal areas? And how do you think that's going to evolve over the next several years?
Yeah, well, the overriding thing that has been around, at least for the last half dozen years or so, has been workforce. Continued workforce shortages, even before there was such a thing as a Great Resignation. This industry and all of our members have really struggled with skilled labor, skilled workforce, particularly in the technician space. So that's been something that AED and our AED Foundation, which is our 501c3 part of the organization, and really focuses their time and effort on, is addressing and doing what we can from our level to support workforce development. And that's continued on and has not changed. Some of the themes that we've seen recently, which are, again, really industry, not about our industry, but other industries, is supply chain. This industry got hit just as much as anybody when it comes to supply chain, particularly chips and electronic technology has really slowed down the delivery of the equipment. Fortunately, the manufacturers are up and running. They're able to build the equipment. It's just a little bit on the supply chain side has been a little slow. But we do see that as coming out out of the current status in the next 6 to 9 to 12 months. And getting back to normal production levels because the demand absolutely is there. Contractors in general are buying everything they can get their hands on, renting everything they get their hands on because there is a lot of work already going on because during COVID, they all stopped. They're all deemed essential businesses. So they didn't stop working. They continued to fix the roads and infrastructure and put down broadband across the country. So that has been beneficial to them. And we don't see that slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah. And there, you mentioned some of the challenges people, and I think, that's sort of evergreen across a lot of industries, tight labor market, higher labor costs, material shortages, supply chain issues and clogs. What are the strategies that companies are using to offset, maybe not directly, potentially indirectly to put their businesses in a strong place, more secure footing, knowing that there's some choppiness in the waters?
Well, on the workforce side, as they've done, we work very closely with a lot of our distributor members in engaging with their local community colleges that we work to accredit as the national accrediting body for diesel equipment technicians. To really work with them to get that pipeline of students going into that, communicating within those areas of the great career opportunities that exist within this industry as maybe a diesel technician starting, moving up into service management and any levels of the organization. So that's a little bit what we've been doing on that front, and we continue to see that going. On the equipment side and the supply chain side, addressing that topic, I think the equipment distributors have been renting probably a little more than they have in the past to keep some of that inventory on hand versus selling it outright. They probably could sell it until the supply chain catches up. But I think anybody that's watches the industry fairly closely have seen the used equipment market and the auctions market pricing go up significantly as well as the other source for the contractors to get equipment they need to do the projects they're working on.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really interesting. And what is your sense for technology in the space? And that's such a broad term because technology can be diagnostics in the field. It can be the things they use to manage work day to day. How are companies thinking about it? First of all, are they seeking out proactively things that will give them an edge? And are there particular areas that they're focused?
Yeah. Technology has been a theme since, again, the past half a dozen years, if not a dozen years, particularly in the area of so-called telematics, which is more of the equipment monitoring in the field that has been around for quite a while. Dealers have been working to better utilize that information to support their customers. We see that continuing, if not slowing down at all. Technology within their own businesses is coming along much faster as of late as well, with them utilizing capabilities that are out there from providers that are coming up with new inventive ways to really allow them to address maybe some of that workforce skills gap that they're seeing, to really make better use of the resources they have by utilizing some of the technology that's out there for communications with customers, whereas they may not have as many people to be able to engage with customers as in the past. So leveraging that technology to make their businesses work and grow with maybe not necessarily growing at the same size of the organization as they've had in the past, to address that workforce shortage that exists across the board.
And Jon, you mentioned that the supply chain, you see that kind of coming back or normalizing at some point. What maybe is going to be the persistent challenge or headwind that these companies are going to face over the next 5 years? What is the biggest threat or the biggest risk for companies in the space with all of the factors that are around right now?
Yeah, it's hard to say what the biggest risk is right now. We definitely see the workforce thing is continuing to be the biggest, I think, risk because it's hard to just find the people. We hear from the contractor side of the industry that even operators are hard to find getting into that space. I think the supply chain from the equipment standpoint, as you've seen, it probably already started to impact on your local car dealers are starting to have inventory again. The parking lots are starting to get full again, and we'll see that moving into the equipment space as well. Consistent headwinds, I think, is continued to be able to operate efficiently without having to significantly grow their organizations because of that workforce and if you look at just in general the reports on the birth rates in the United States are declining. You've got baby boomers now rotating out of the industry. There is a gap of just pure labor for any type of job, skilled or unskilled, between now and till the next generation comes in when there's a little bit more of a bubble coming back and maybe in the future. So we look at lots of different ways here to try to address workforce shortages, promote the industry, promote the viability of it long term. And I think that's a headwind that will continue to be around that has been talked about already, and I think will be talked about for many years into the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's not something you turn on a dime if it's a generational issue. And you're right. I mean, you have compounding factors of an aging workforce as well as a tight labor market, higher labor cost. And, it all adds up to definitely a major headwind for the industry. But I think generally, if it's fair to say, the outlook is fairly promising, right? There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm and positivity about the industry, investments that are being made and opportunities to grow these businesses. So with that said, if you think 10 years out, what is kind of your bold prediction, your hot take for the state of the industry?
Well, I'll definitely say this is kind of off the record, my own opinion, not necessarily the voice of AED. We definitely, from an AED perspective, with the infrastructure spending bill that did pass, we do see that as a very stable sign for the next few years as that funding gets into the state levels, into state projects, and into the local municipalities. Bold prediction. We always view every industry as cyclic. We've been riding a pretty strong wave even before COVID and through COVID. A pretty strong performance. I guess my personal bold prediction is I don't see an end in sight unless something significantly unusual happens. I think everyone can kind of attest to themselves as to the state of infrastructure in the U.S. and Canada and the areas we cover is in dire need of repair in many cases. We don't necessarily lead in a lot of cases to the best roads and best bridges. There's a lot of work to be done there. Airports, water, wastewater type applications, and broadband, particularly delivering broadband to rural areas is probably, it was definitely in the funding for the infrastructure bill, and we'll see that going forward much more in the future. So I think my bold prediction is we're going to see a pretty strong and long wave of stability in this industry going forward, barring any type of very unusual event. I guess that's I'll do my economist clause there, unless there's something unforeseen we don't know about yet.
Yeah, we won't hold you to account for your bold prediction, but it's interesting. Infrastructure is one of those sort of bipartisan, everybody can rally around it ideas. So I tend to agree with you. I think that there's a lot of momentum and it's something everybody gets behind. And being somebody who just ran over about 15 potholes today, I feel pretty good about the job security and the market opportunity. So, Jon, thank you so much for joining and sharing your perspective. AED Summit was amazing. You all do a fantastic job. Looking forward to gathering with you and the crew at more events in the future, and would love to have you back to continue to talk about progress and updates.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We have a full slate of events this year. We're back to all live events. We have our smaller conferences going on the rest of the year, kind of topical focused covering very niche topics, whether finance or leadership or, more focused on a certain size of organization, leading into our annual summit will be back in Chicago in January of 2023. And I do promise it'll be 72 and fluorescent inside, regardless of what's going on outside. So I encourage you. I'm hoping you guys will come back. And what you experienced this past year is just the start. I think next year is going to be bigger and broader as we do lead into next year being a Con Expo year, which is one of the largest construction shows for contractors to attend in Las Vegas a little bit later in 2023. So it usually ends up being a good opportunity to get started at our conference for that event.
Jon, I'm excited for all of it and appreciate your time today.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jon. Take care.
All right, bye.
That was awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Was it longer or shorter than last time? Or?
Let's see. Probably about around the same.